Hello and welcome to a special edition of Sport Industry Spotlight. My name is Alex Coulson and I'm Managing Director of Sport Industry Group. And I'm very excited to be part of the Industry Talks track we have going on today. So let's crack on. This session, we're going to be looking at what responsible fan engagement looks like in our new world. Our world is always changing, and so as we know, but the pandemic is really ushering in innovation at a speed we haven't seen before. And whether you're involved in the business of sport, its social impact, or both, change is happening across the board for the players, the fans, the rules, the media, the participants, everyone. So what we're going to try and look at in this session, and most importantly, trying to navigate what lies ahead in the future for sport, the business ecosystem that surrounds it, and also sport's ability to make a positive impact on society. So today's format is as follows. Each speaker, and by the way, what an incredible crew we have lined up for us today. Each speaker will introduce themselves and share their views, and then we'll come back together for a group discussion with a Q&A. So please submit your questions in the stage chat box on the right of your screen, and I will put them to our wonderful panelists afterwards. Right, I won't waste any more time from me. And so I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Christophe Dubi, Olympic Games Executive Director at the IOC. So Christophe will be joining us on the screen imminently. Christophe, over to you when you pop up. Lovely.
Can you see me, Alex?
I can see you. The stage is yours, Christophe. I shall depart for now. See you later.
Well, thank you, Alex, and good afternoon, good morning, all. Listen, in those 5 minutes, I will not speak so much about COVID-19 and the impact on fan engagement, but I will speak about fan engagement overall, because we went through a cultural shift within the IOC, but I will speak also a little bit about the adaptations for Tokyo. But what is fundamental for us now compared to where we were in the past is that we're not starting with games organization on the basis that we need to reach operational excellence. For a very long time, this is what we were about. Make sure we can deliver the games excellently. And our efforts were in this realm. We were investing with time and expertise, looking for solutions, but the market has evolved tremendously. You have many more solutions now, which simplify the life of an organizing committee. And that allows us to shift to what really matters. And it's the experience of all participants, fan and others, and starting with the athletes. So now operational excellence is just a way to deliver fan and other experience. So we have to reverse engineer the way we process games organization. You start with the end result and you plan the experience you want, physical, digital, for your various population groups. And then you adapt games organization to these objectives. And it's not necessarily easy because we inside the IOC were equipped with very technical, great people that can deliver transportation, security, accreditation, broadcasting, and so on and so forth. We need to have now also people with us that think experience for any of the population group comes games time. Our vision is that at games time, you cannot escape, but consume and be hooked to the games. First, because it's the right thing to do. Speaking about positive impact that sport can generate, where is it better than Tokyo next year to have that feeling of being together for a better world through sport, through an event called the Olympic Games. But we have to be organized in the way we plan for this amazing opportunity. And what we've done is looked at everything we do from a physical standpoint, everything you can consume in Tokyo, from an opening ceremony to the torch relay, live site, and others, but every digital consumption as well. And the overarching terms we're using, don't know whether we're gonna keep on working with this one, but was digital. It's a physical and digital experience. This has to be well planned in advance, well thought through, and seamlessly integrated. When it comes to the execution, we were ready to go, and we have to redo it because of the 1-year postponement. And there I'll go very quickly. Basically, we have first to secure the fundamentals, which is basically all your sport venues, the village, the main media centers. We have to review the positioning. Remember, the games of Tokyo were positioned as the reconstruction game, the resilience games. Well, this was Tokyo hosting the world to witness what you can do with the power of an event like this in a country that was affected years before. Well, next year is different. It's going to be all about all of us, that is the global community, gathering together to celebrate humanity overcoming COVID. This is where we come together and celebrate what we have collectively achieved. So second is the positioning of the games that needs to be altered, and something we will reveal on 23rd of July, 1 year to go. Then we have to produce saving, simply because it's immensely costly when you are ready with all your resources on stage to postpone a year. So we have to find savings, and we are doing this while always keeping the experience in mind. Everywhere we save, we ask ourselves the question, is it impacting the experience? And then we have to play with different scenarios, because simply we don't know what the situation will be a year from now. So we have to have these different sanitary conditions. And here again, it's exactly the same. For each and every scenario, we think experience. What does it mean if we have to reduce the number of spectators, if we have to maintain social distance, if we have to X, Y, Z? So everything is looked at with the prism, through the prism of what is the experience, how we maximize that moment in time, either behind a screen or in a venue, so that when you've consumed, you turn back and you say, I was present and it was the time of my life. Over, Alex.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Christophe. Love the idea of always experience first and then adapting your objectives to meet that experience. I look forward to maybe chatting a bit more about that in the Q&A. But now I'm going to be delighted to introduce our next guest, who is dialing in from Singapore. And we're very lucky to have with us Sanchit Garg, who is Global Head of Brand and Media Partnerships from the One Championship. Sanchit, over to you once you pop up on the screen here. Wonderful. Good to see you again. I will leave you and look forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Great. Thank you, Alex. Well, I guess the first statement I'll make is if you look at sports media companies all over the world, I would say they've been trying to solve for engagement between live events for a while now. And obviously, COVID-19 has impacted, but it's accelerated that trend. And when you look at a company like One Championship, I would say it's a bit of a unique place that we are in, because we were born in a digital era about 9 years ago. We think of ourselves as a content factory, ranging from live sporting events in martial arts to esports events like the one that is happening right now. As we speak, there's a Dota 2 event that we are conducting right now, to reality general entertainment content. Now, which essentially allows us to attract a very young demographic, which would be 80% millennial and Gen Z. And naturally, we lean a lot towards our social and digital channels to keep them engaged. Now, every month we touch close to 400 million uniques on Facebook globally. So obviously, we're creating a ton of shoulder content, highlights, home workouts, magazine content, on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. But also VR content on YouTube. And that to us is powerful, because there's a lot of this content that we've been shooting, I would say, for the last few years, where if you wear your VR headsets, you're actually able to experience yourself standing in a ring and actually engaging with some of our top athletes. And this is an experience we plan to recreate even on the esports front. And obviously, I would say when you look at this, it is created for a company like us, which is a media entity, and we think of ourselves as a media company, a range of opportunities and challenges. And what are those opportunities? Let me start with the opportunities. I think it has created an entire new category of content where we infuse our own different IP, be it martial arts or esports. What do I mean by that? We are creating a lot of our content using our athletes, let's say Brendan Vera, who's very famous, or Demetrius Johnson. They're global stars. Using them as well as our esports IP, where of course they're competing on many gaming titles. In this case, for example, Mobile Legends, which is 500 million downloads and is widely popular all across Southeast Asia. That allows us, of course, to touch upon our esports fan, but as well as our martial arts fans. And that works for us because there's a huge overlap, 70% overlap. 70% of our martial arts fans are also keen on esports because at the end of the day, the underlying demographic is the same. In addition to that, we're producing a ton of localized content, and that to us is, of course, worked really well. There are about 4 billion people in Asia, of which 2.5 billion people are, within the same time zone within 2.5 hours, which is a big target audience for us. And there's a huge opportunity that we feel that we can capture through that if we are able to localize our content, because of course, COVID is common. Every person on the planet is facing it. But the kind of narrative, the kind of hot topics that are there in different countries is, of course, different. And we have the ability to localize a lot of content, which allows us to, of course, deliver more fresh content. Many of times it's localized version of the same content, which allows us to proliferate more content, but also allows us to create more genres of content in different markets, which gives us more traction in all our social channels. The third is esports, as I talked about earlier. Just as this session looks like right now, we are, more than 100 and 200 people are joining all over the world. Well, guess what? That's exactly what an esports tournament looks like. You have teams which represent, a single team can represent 10 to 15 countries. The entire pool of teams can probably represent more than 50 to 60 countries. And as we speak right now, we have a Dota 2 Pro League going on, because at the end of the day, while live events in physical shape or form cannot happen, we all know there's a ton of demand of content that is happening right now. And for that, we can still do a lot of live online esports tournaments, which allow us to engage our audience day in, day out. And I think the fourth thing that I'll say in terms of the opportunity that we see is also new forms of content. And this is something, again, and I'll probably touch upon what Christophe said. I guess we have an opportunity where we start from the experience and back solve. One of the key things that we at least figured out as a content company who's into sports, who's into esports, who's into now reality content, is that there is a ton of demand of non-live sports related content. You can see that with The Last Dance coming on Netflix. And we saw this as a great opportunity, and we are now launching non-live sports related content. We're launching The Apprentice, One Championship Edition, which is expected to be, the toughest apprentice with a sports reality business spin. Think of it as a Shark Tank meets Amazing Race, with some of the top athletes from One Championship featuring, and of course, Chatri, who's the host. We've got already 4,000 applications, and it looks good. That to us is a great opportunity where we're creating new forms of content. And again, if you have millennials and Gen Z as your target audience, I guess, new forms of content are always engaging. Of course, it is also coming up with a lot of challenges. There are many challenges, I guess, that are quite obvious in terms of empty stadiums. How do you engage fans in general, your super fans, your partners, your business partners? I guess I'll bring up a different challenge here. We think it's also a big challenge of how do we keep our athletes engaged at the end of the day, both on, I would say, physical sports like martial arts and also esports. How would they feel when they are competing and performing in an empty stadium? And I guess in esports, this problem is even more pronounced, because at the end of the day, you're not actually able to meet many of these athletes in person, because many of them are based in different countries. They only fly in when they are actually matches happening, in a particular tournament in a particular continent. And I feel that there is a big, big opportunity for us to build ecosystem around their own mental well-being, because they're, of course, practicing 10 to 12 hours a day in front of a computer screen. And how do we create an ecosystem? And many of them actually, their parents had no clue about what a career in esports looks like. So more often than not, it is the team CEOs or the team managers who end up being sort of their parents. And I think at the same time, this is a great opportunity for, a lot of the new age, I would say, sports companies to actually build that capability on how do we manage talent, especially when it comes to new forms of entertainment like esports. And I would also present that as a big challenge in these times when, of course, many of the people are not able to engage. And I think the last thing I'll probably add here, which is, on the technology front, we think it's important for us to also ramp up our owned and operated platform, like our own app, We will continue to build, new forms of content, community engagement, and features on our app. And exciting news around the games is also around the corner. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Covered so much ground there. And I think it's a real advantage perhaps for those sports organizations born of a digital age, describing itself as a content factory and a media factory. And we'll talk about that later. But we'll say now goodbye for now. And now we are delighted to have not one, but two senior leaders from the NFL. So please welcome, first we have Laura Lefton, Senior Director of Club Business Development, and also Melissa Schiller, Director of Community Relations. Over to you guys.
Hi, thanks, Alex. Thanks for having us. Pleasure to be here. We're going to talk to you a little bit about an event you might have seen, heard of, called the Draft. And for us, obviously, that looked a little bit different this year. So about March 16th, we ended up deciding we weren't going to be physically in Las Vegas. And that gave us about 4 weeks to plan for a virtual draft. And we didn't necessarily go from 0 to 100, where we kind of said, okay, we're not doing anything in Vegas and we're going right to the commissioner's basement. We explored different options on whether, we should have people in Vegas in a small capacity. Can we still have coaches and GMs at our team facilities making picks? And by the time we ended up calling it a completely virtual draft, we had about 2 weeks to really pull that off. But the entire time, I think we had sort of four goals in front of us. Obviously, the safety and competitive equity of the draft was super important and number one for us. Could we honor the prospects in the same way we've done in the past? Could we provide an escape for fans, right? I think this was the first sporting event since the pandemic started. And so there was a lot of sort of pressure there. I think we always knew we were going to do the draft. It's just we didn't know how it was going to turn out. And then can we do good? And that's what Melissa's going to talk about in a second. I think for us, it obviously took a village at the NFL, and virtually to pull this off was really challenging. But, sort of exploring the different technologies that really allowed us to engage our fan base, engage our coaches and players in such a way that was really humanizing, ended up being pretty special for us. And so there was a lot of learnings there that I think, for us, we're going to certainly apply in future drafts. We know we're going to be obviously continuing being on the ground in our locations next year in Cleveland and the following year in Vegas. But how do we take kind of some of what we did for this year's virtual draft and apply it to enhance that experience? I think, we learned that using technology, we could engage fans all across the country. We had our teams tap fans each night to participate in what we called a virtual inner circle behind the commissioner. And he was integrating with them the entire night. And they were live on camera, but they were also off camera hanging out with him, which was really cool. And so how can we take that and use that in future drafts to make sure we have more fan engagement? In Nashville last year, we had about 600,000 people show up on site, right? And that's a lot of people, but it was only in Nashville. So how do we expand that to make sure all of our fans across the country are a part of our draft and, quite frankly, other events? I talked about the humanizing aspect. I think that's the biggest comment we got, is how they were able to see our coaches and GMs in their homes with their kids and their dogs. And people love that. And people love seeing the commissioner kind of in a chill fashion. So I think those are learnings we're going to take. And then the other thing I'll talk about before I turn it over to Melissa is, a lot of our teams were able to kind of integrate their fans in other ways that they hadn't done before. So a lot of them, most of them held draft parties virtually. A lot of them new fans, new demographics that they hadn't really been able to reach out before. I think one of the comments we got, was that we have this new demographic of moms who are on, Twitter following the draft and looking at interior designs of, the houses that were featured and stuff. So that new demographic for us is really important in women and youth, et cetera. And I think the draft really did that for us this year. So Melissa, you want to talk a little about the community aspect?
Yeah, sure. So Thank you, Beyond Sport, for having us. In my role, I oversee the NFL's community relations platforms, and this year was tasked to look at this virtual draft that came about in a few weeks and figure out how we could really infuse community into the draft. This was the first ever, sport event well, not first ever, in the last few months since COVID, since the shutdowns. We really needed to strike the right balance. We needed to have the right tone to bring entertainment into people's living rooms, but also really ensure that cause and unification was front and center. So I'd say one of the biggest challenges with this virtual space, especially in the beginning, was everyone was really eager to jump in. I think a lot of people were home and sheltering in place for the first time, and very interested in how we were going to bring this to life. So our main objective here was really to honor the frontline workers that were out there and the first responders, as well as really raise as much funding as possible. We were challenged with, how do you ask people to donate where they might be in not necessarily the best financial situation, but also support our communities. So our partners were really key and externally. We worked hand in hand with our social media group to bring to life the first ever Draftathon Live. So this was a live stream that was alongside the NFL draft. It was also worked into the broadcasts and shared on all of our platforms. But it was really a way to bring all of our biggest talent, our players, they were all home at this time. So what other time do you have everyone in one, quote unquote room? So we brought everyone onto the stream and had just organic, authentic conversations that were tied to what they were doing at home and really tied to this unification effort to raise money. So we were live for the entirety of the draft, and were able to cross the line of raising over $100 million for COVID relief. So this is a very specific example, as Laura mentioned, and as we all likely know, community engagement moving forward will definitely look a lot different, both this year and honestly beyond. So we look forward to talking more about this during the Q&A piece. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Laura and Melissa. I feel like in all those sessions there, the other speakers are going to join us back. We just had a sort of 20-minute MBA with so much going on there. So thank you very much for that. While the other speakers come back and join us, I'm just going to put a question to you from the floor. I'll direct this one to you, Laura, from Mark Gonzalez, who's just interested in what role each team played in supporting your efforts around the draft.
They all played a ton of roles, honestly. I think, obviously technology was huge. Our IT team at the league and both at the clubs were key. Each club basically had an IT person on site at our coach and GM's homes to make sure that everything went smoothly. So that was huge. We had obviously the teams participate in amplifying the draft, right? And so while we had the broadcast going on, the teams were really kind of amplifying the draft from a social media perspective and online, and having these draft parties and engaging their fans. And so aside from the players being drafted and the coaches and the GMs and the football ops side, we really had our business side kind of bring things to life from a social and digital standpoint.
Speaking of tech issues, I'm not sure if Laura hasn't got the NFL IT team outside her office right now or home, but I'm sure she'll jump back in a second. Whilst we're talking, Christophe, you look like an avatar. Maybe you can lean a little bit further forward so we can see you. I've got a question I want to put to you, Christophe. Perfect, thank you. I think I'm right in saying that the Tokyo 2020 CEO talked about the games being a simplified games and less of a sort of a grand splendor. How will that impact the fan engagement opportunities, do you feel?
I hope it won't. What will remain, and that's for Tokyo and for the games in the future, is games which are open arms. We wanted to create the opportunities for fans that will be in Tokyo to do what NFL does extremely well, by the way, during their events. It's to engage fans and have them participate, try the sports. We're going to have a very exciting urban park in Odaiba, and we want to create for the youngsters and some oldies as well, to be out there on the fields of play, trying out the skateboard or the sports climbing. And we want to create these opportunities throughout Tokyo and across Japan. We have also in the future, and this is more for Paris, nevertheless, I'll speak about it, the development of mass events where we want, as of now, to create events where people can participate under the banner of the Olympics. You can run a marathon and gain points because you have the best wig or great clothing, and be in Paris the day of the marathon and run prior to the pros. So we want to create this deeper engagement with fans, and obviously this goes in the digital space as well. You've probably seen our campaign, which currently runs, Stay Strong, which has a reach of over 250 million people now, with more than 5,000 athletes, most of them Olympians, participating, encouraging everyone to be active, even if staying at home. So these are the kind of things we have to do, and we have to put the power of this brand to the service of being more active, being more engaged, and living, breathing the values which are respect, excellence, friendship. Why? Because it matters in this world much more than it mattered already a lot before. Completely. And what I'm saying here is, in sport, we have that capacity to be, again, open arms, non-discriminatory. We have this possibility to deliver values for the participants and the youngsters in particular. This is what we're going to do, and strive everywhere we can and in every shape and form.
Excellent. And it's great to hear the sort of convergence of digital to actually physical experiences as well. And I'm sure we'll look forward to Paris 24 and before, and we can kind of get together in a mass event type capacity. Sanchit, from a fairly recent news from the One Championship, there's in terms of cash, more investment. And so will fan engagement technology and tools be the beneficiary of this cash injection?
Well, certainly, I guess a lot of this, at the end of the day, what keeps the investors happy is the fact that there is a growth, and there's a growth in not just, the number of people we touch, but also the number of people we keep engaged on a regular basis. So 80% of our audience, for example, stays on our platform for more than a year. That to them, of course, is very powerful. And the only way to do that is, as you said, to invest more and more in fan engagement. Of course, for us, it's always been and will always be a bit more lean towards, I would say, the new digital platforms. We are doing a lot on TikTok now. Of course, we're investing a lot in our own and operated our own app, and creating a ton of fan engagement on our own app through the power of games. I mentioned at the start that we will also launch a new game very soon. The key for us, of course, at the end of the day is it's a longer term vision. Right now, we are, of course, on the esports front. We are working with many of the existing game titles, with Valve on Dota 2, Moonton for Mobile Legends. Eventually, of course, we have a vision to build our own. That's probably a 2024 question right now. But eventually, the key for us is that once we have built this capability of engaging fans through different forms of content, it could be on martial arts, it could be on esports, now through reality content, eventually we want to own the entire piece of the IP. And once you're able to create an engagement over a period of time by investment in each of these tools that I talked about, and you also are able to own the different pieces of the IP, then you're able to create many, many more opportunities to engage with fans. That to us is powerful. For example, right now, even on the esports front, we're working not just with our own set of tournaments, but we're also creating a lot of content with teams. Of course, right now, we don't own the teams. Teams are independent. But in future, of course, when we own the gaming rights on our own, then we can create a lot more, I would say, synergies with, working together with the teams as well as with the developers.
Excellent. I'm going to, Melissa, put to you a question from the floor from Anne Schnepp, and it's sort of, I guess, preceded by what Laura was talking about, how you guys really humanized the draft. And Anne's question is, did you notice some differences in the fan engagement because of the draft being held virtually? And I guess specifically from a cause point of view, how did that really resonate more in your mind?
Yeah, fan engagement obviously looked very different around the draft this year. Our social stream, it was the first year that we did this stream that went alongside the draft, and the numbers of fans that were tuned in both to the broadcast and to the social stream, I think we've all seen over the years, people are not just engaging on one screen, but they're engaging on multiple screens. So we use this insight to create something that was an enhancement to the broadcast. And in doing so, we had fans engage with the social stream and then also donate. So community engagement looked a little bit different. Each year around the draft, we tend to have community events and we're engaging with local community partners. We weren't able to do that in the same way, but we still were able to do that with our community partners. I think I saw Diana in the chat. TAPS is one of our great community partners, and we were able to engage them in the draft in a different way. We brought community partners onto our social stream through their spokespeople. So we weren't necessarily just playing a PSA, but actually having someone come onto the screen that was someone that fans would know. So it was interesting to them, but they could speak organically and authentically about the causes that they were supporting. So it was definitely new for us. I think we had a lot of learnings that we will bring into the future, regardless of if we're at home or in person.
And I guess we've all learned a lot during lockdown, and some things we've, like I said at the opening, this has ushered in change that perhaps was due, but has come a lot faster. I'm going to put the same question to all of you. Is there one thing, or you could pinpoint or highlight as a genuine success that maybe came about because of the situation we were in, but is almost certainly something you're going to look to continue with? Christophe, I'll come to you first. I mean, maybe it's related to the sort of Stay Strong campaign that you touched on, or there's something else that's number one in your mind at the moment.
Yeah, from a management standpoint, that you never have enough humility. You come very close to something immense, and suddenly it feels so remote and full of risk and uncertainty. So that is one. The second is that in all these efforts, you have no passengers. You are a fan, you're the owner of the franchise, you're an organizer, no passenger. Everybody can contribute. And this is what technology allows us to do, is to all contribute positively. No passengers. That's what is really important. It belongs to us. Sport belongs to all of us. Games belongs to all of us. It belongs, and we belong.
Excellent. Love that. Melissa, I'm going to come to you. What's the sort of any key takeaway that's been implemented during this time?
Yeah, I spoke to a number of our teams this week preparing for this talk, and I think connection will look very different moving forward, but it's key. Connection to our favorite sports teams, to our favorite sports players, and to one another. So I think leveraging technology and really just ensuring that all plans are flexible and adaptable. I think every day we're receiving new information and we're all inundated with kind of what's to come and the overwhelming sense of the news out there. And I think just being able to create plans that have flexibility and can take shape in different forms will be key for all of us moving forward.
Excellent. So many wise things coming down. I can't keep up taking my notes. Sanchit, just finish this off. What's the sort of standout point from you?
Well, I would say I think Laura put it quite well. I feel that finding the pockets of new demographics and new opportunity is great for us, and we see a lot of new user behavior. Maybe because of lockdown, we see people gaming more, and obviously that has led to a surge of many of our women gamers, and that's a great demographic for us. Eventually, esports is a great equalizer, and we see that as a great opportunity for us. So I guess the learning for us is, of course, to find those pocket of opportunities of new demographics, and of course, the data lake that we're building and a ton of analytics that we have around all our platforms to find those inputs is very useful or is very insightful. And I guess using those insights, finding that those pockets would be one learning for us.
Thank you. I mean, if I just attempt to recap, we talked about humility. So everyone can contribute. We're all part of this journey, the connection to it and using that data analytics and insight. That's a lot to think about. And I'm so sad that sort of time is beating us somewhat, but I'm certainly going to sort of look back over this session again, and so I can sort of relive it. Thank you so much for all of your time, everybody. Really, really appreciate it. I think we're going to now move on to our sessions. So I'll say thanks again to our speakers, and we'll catch up again soon. And so the next step for you guys, once you're sort of still digesting all of that, is actually to go through straight on to the breakout sessions that will start in the next few minutes. So they're open to everyone, but they are focused on teams, leagues, and governing bodies. There's 2 rounds, each for 30 minutes. The first round will be a case study from teams. Sorry, I'm about to have a little baby interrupt me. And first round will be a case study from teams and leagues from around the world, and the second one will be about what innovating approaches are taking to address these challenges. So please click on the sessions tab on the left-hand side of your screen to see the session choices and choose which one you want. That's it. Thanks very much for being a part of this, and I look forward to chatting with you all soon. All the best. Bye-bye.